So Phil Henry from the Capricornia Chamber of Commerce here again with our next candidate for Mayor of Livingston Shire, Lynelle Burns. Welcome, Lynelle.
Thank you, Phil.
So before we kick off, because we're going to be talking about the next 4 years of local government and maybe a bit into the future, but before we talk about that, we've got this COVID-19 coronavirus going around. It's having a massive impact on our lives. Any initial thoughts about that, particularly in relation to business and industry, I guess?
I think it's probably going to cripple a lot of business and industry. It's already started impacting people, casuals particularly, but even in the local community we're getting more and more notifications from organisations who are closing their doors or reducing their staff or trying to find different ways to operate with home deliveries and things like that.
Yeah.
So people are trying, but there are obviously other industries, tourism, where you can't really do home delivery. So those organisations are already beginning to experience that.
Okay, so we'll kick into the questions and that you've had there. So just talking about, I guess, industry sectors for the Livingston Shire, do you have any view about an ideal mix of sectors we should have, and what steps need to be taken to ensure we've got a balanced economy?
That is a good question. It's one that I struggle with myself because of the type of work I'm in, which is project management and business type analysis and things like that. I always find it very difficult to find work in our area. Most jobs I've had are in Rocky, so I've been fortunate enough to do that. But I'd like to see us be able to encourage more corporate or large business into the area so that we have opportunities for people who aren't in construction or tourism to have opportunities here. Absolutely, tourism is critical because we have such a magnificent array of tourism destinations through the caves and Byfield and out here on the coast in Keppel Island. But we've got graziers and the pineapple facility, so there does need to be a mix, and it also needs to be a little more spread as well, I believe. But for me, mostly, just from my experience and trying to find jobs for young people, there needs to be a more focused approach to getting sort of business type, office admin, that sort of industry engaged here as well.
Let's move on to the planning scheme. If we imagine that 10,000 people moved into Livingston Shire over about the next 10 years, where should we put them and in what style of accommodation, whether it's semi-detached or detached or medium density?
I am into tiny houses at the moment. I love all the tiny house concepts and the idea of minimising our impact, using more sustainable methods of waste and electricity and water treatment and stuff. I also think that for a lot of us, and I'm of an age in my family where one of the kids is already out the door and the next one's on his way up and ignores us. So we've got a house we don't need. We take up half of it. We would probably happily move into something smaller, but you have the issue of not being able to find something equivalent for a reasonable price. Whereas if we, in our planning, had the requirement to put smaller houses and smaller allotments interspersed with the larger ones, I don't want it to be too dense. That's what I'd like to see. I'd also like to see Glenlee, Oliver Estate, all of that area start to build up as well. Not high density, but with the ring road going through there, coming out where it does on the Yeppoon Road turn-off, I think there's a lot of opportunity to expand out that way, but with proper planning, with green corridors. I'm big on community gardens and parks and connected pathways and things, so agree we need to have the ability to put people in lots of different places, and in Yeppoon, higher density. People, I think, recognise that Yeppoon is the central hub of the area, so there is an expectation that we will have some higher density, but definitely we need to focus on the environment and maintaining the beautiful area that we have and incorporating that environmental protection into our development.
So even if we don't get 10,000 people, the Shire is going to grow fairly rapidly. What are our key infrastructure needs?
Roads. So I think everyone's fairly agreed on that one. So we've heard lots of talk over the last few weeks because there's an election on, about how we might go about that. And so I have a view on that as well. But from my perspective, I've been involved in disability industry, one of my previous employments, and so sort of started to understand a lot more about the needs of people with disabilities, and not to put too much of a commercial premium on that. People now with NDIS have an opportunity to have more control of how they live their lives and how they spend their money. So there are more people who are looking for places to holiday. Now, the infrastructure here, I don't believe caters for that type of tourism at the moment. So I'd like to see infrastructure around changing rooms for adults, looking at the building codes so that whatever level the building is that has elevators, all that sort of stuff that enables people with diverse abilities to come to our area to holiday and be able to get around quite easily.
You might have seen in the media that Capricornia Chamber of Commerce joined in with CCIQ in a statewide initiative about approaching councils to help small business during the current economic situation by providing relief from rates, fees and charges. To the best of your knowledge, what's the scope for that here, and should council do that sort of thing?
I think that council should be doing whatever it can to help small businesses, because we need our small businesses. We rely on them. Most of the business in our shire is small business, and there are, if you look at the fee schedules for a lot of things, you'll go, well, yes, I recognise there's an administration cost, but some of them are $200-300. You pay to apply, then you pay for your licence, then you pay to renew it. So I think that even if it's in the next 2 or 3 years, because I believe this is a long-term recovery, that there should be scope for council to waive pretty much all business charges, from my perspective.
So a fairly closely allied question. In common with a lot of other country centres, we've got a lot of vacant shops in the main street. What can be done about that?
Good question, that one. You're right, it happens pretty much everywhere. The things that I think will bring people to the centre are businesses that people need to use, or businesses that people like to use, or council facilities. I'd like to see the library moved to the town centre. You get people coming to the library, they might then go next door to have a coffee. Council admin office for customer service, where the council offices are now aren't, it's a lovely building, but not necessarily easily accessible. And if people are in the main street, they're more likely to go to other businesses in the main street while they're out and about. So that sort of thing is what I would like to see, is those services included in that main strip, because it will be difficult. The more people move towards the waterfront, the harder it's going to be to get people using those other shop fronts.
Okay, well, thanks for all of that. Before we wrap up, any final thoughts from you on these issues?
I would say to people who are a bit, don't know me, which is most people, I haven't had lots of years of experience in council, but what I do have is a lot of corporate governance and project management experience. Everywhere I've worked, governed by legal documents, and so I'm quite au fait with reading and digesting. And every business I go into, every organisation I go into, I essentially have to learn that business from scratch to be able to do my job and deliver the projects that I deliver. So I have no issue at all with my confidence and my ability to step into the mayoral role, learn the business, work with the people that are already here and already expert, and change the focus on making sure that our people have what they need, and that includes our small business operators.
Lynelle Burns, thank you very much.
Thanks, Phil. Appreciate it.